Okay, perfect. So first, hello and good morning, actually, from beautiful Vancouver here. So it says Tokyo here, but I'm physically now in Vancouver. So thank you for accommodating this time slot for me, so I don't have to make the presentation 2 in the morning. So yes, I'll be talking about pharyngeals in writing systems. So I'm starting off from phonemes, from phonology, and going into scripts, what I call encoding the rare. So first question, of course, is what are pharyngeals? So pharyngeals are consonants with primary articulation in the pharynx, which is basically the throat. If you look at the current IPA chart, you would only find these two signs designated as pharyngeals, having a pharyngeal place of articulation, and contrasting with so-called epiglottals, these three guys here. But later research, it's not that late, but the IPA still haven't accommodated to that yet, actually sees the differentiation between epiglottal and pharyngeal more of a manner of articulation, not a place of articulation. To cut the story short, when I say pharyngeals in this talk, I mean both IPA pharyngeals and epiglottals, and they actually never contrastive in any language of the world. There's suspicion for one dialect in one language in the North Caucasus, but that's an exceptional case. Otherwise, they are never phonemic. You only find the one pair or the other. In any case, when I say pharyngeal, I mean all of that. So geographical and genealogical distribution of these speech sounds. So we're still speaking about phonemes in phonology. So they are mostly concentrated in 3 areas of the world. So in Afro-Asiatic languages, the Middle East, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa. Possibly the most well-known example is Arabic, the North Caucasus, so-called Mount of Languages, and the Pacific Northwest, where I am now. So in Canada and the USA, where many of the First Nation languages have these speech sounds, and other languages. They are exceptionally rare phonemes, so that's why I say encoding the rare. They occur on only 23 languages of a sample of 566, so about 4% of that sample. Anyway, why pharyngeals? So for several reasons, I think they make a great testing ground to study phonemes across scripts and study scripts beyond the original phonemes. And now I will list the reasons and the domains I will look into. So they are typologically rare, as I said, just 4% of the world languages, or at least from that sample, which have them. And they happen to be in the phonemic inventory of languages with some of the oldest writing traditions, such as Hittite and Akkadian, even though it's not part of the phonemic inventory, but it's part of the graphemic. So this can lead to some cases, or makes it suitable that you would find some cases of defective writing, which is having one grapheme to represent more than one phoneme, possibly a rare one too. The second reason is they are typologically rare and, so a capital and, presented the scripts of globally influential languages, just to name a few, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic. So you would have many cases of repurposing of graphemes when other languages, which most of these languages don't have pharyngeals, adopt the scripts where you would find graphemic pharyngeals. And the examples are many from Yiddish to Persian, etc. Third reason, they are typologically rare and present in languages with long written traditions, let's say indigenous scripts. And at the same time, they're diachronically unstable. This would lead to what I call etymologizing orthographies. I will come into that later in detail with some examples. And finally, they are typologically rare. They are part of the phonemic inventory of at least one widely spoken language, being Arabic, and still somehow existing in a Latin script-dominated world, in a sense. So people would have to accommodate how to present these phonemes in Latin and come up with make-do orthographies. I will talk about that also in a bit. So now comes a long list of examples of each of these cases. Maybe I'll have to skip some to keep the time, but let's start with Hittite. So Hittite, an ancient language of Western Asia. This language has a series of syllabograms in cuneiform, which it, of course, borrowed from other languages from Western Asia to render what would be graphemic kh, which is usually analyzed as being a velar or uvular fricative, so something like this. So this is just a part of the series of the syllabograms, where the consonantal part is a velar uvular, which is usually a velar uvular. However, there's some evidence that suggests that this grapheme not only represented velar uvular, but also pharyngeals. And this is best seen in loan words from Hittite or related languages into Semitic languages, which have both phonemic and graphemic pharyngeals. Great example would be the word in Ugaritic, Western Semitic language, for silver. In Hittite script, you would find chatush with this sign, but this is not transcribed as a velar or uvular, but rather as a pharyngeal, and in Ugaritic as hatuth. And another example here is actually velar, voice velar, is kupache, which is a specific form of headdress, a Western Asian headdress, which traveled into Hebrew and other Semitic languages. It has the graphemic ch, but appears consistently in Hebrew as kobwa with ein and not ch. So this would suggest that this grapheme, already in Hittite, represented not only velar uvulars, but also some cases of pharyngeals at least. A better known example of defective writing is Hebrew and Aramaic. So the graphemes for pharyngeals, chet and ein, we know for sure that they represented not only one phoneme, but two phonemes, both the pharyngeal and the uvular series. And this is best attested through transcriptions in the Septuagint, so the Greek translation of a Jewish Greek translation of the Bible, especially of the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, where the transcription is consistent. And we find two forms of transcription of this pharyngeal, and which is also according to Semitic etymology. So just one example with Ein, or a couple of those, Ishmael, this would correspond to Semitic roots with the Ein, with the pharyngeal, and these type of roots are transcribed consistently with the eta, the vowel in Greek. So we'd find Ismail, while Gomorrah, which corresponds to Semitic root with the velar fricative, this is transcribed then with the Greek gamma. So Hebrew does not tell us what we have here. Semitic etymology does, as well as Greek transcriptions. So we know for sure that Hebrew had two phonemes represented by one grapheme, and one of these phonemes is the pharyngeal. Another example is Arabic script, so-called rasm, which is undotted Arabic. So one grapheme for a couple of phonemes. Again here, Ajam is the process where they put dots into them to differentiate. And interestingly enough, the pharyngeals have the primacy here. So they stay the undotted pair, so to speak. Okay, let's skip now this one just to go to so this is the first phenomenon, defective writing, which affected these pharyngeals in multiple scripts, ancient scripts mostly. Repurposing. So this happens, as I said, when a language adopts a language that does not have pharyngeals, which is the case for most languages of the world, adopts a script which has pharyngeal graphemes. Many of the Jewish languages of Europe and beyond are a good case of that. Yiddish is a well-known example. So graphemic ein has actually two uses in Yiddish. One is used in non-Hebrew Aramaic origin words, so words of Germanic or Slavic origin, where it's used as a vowel or shva. This is a case we would find in many repurposing scripts where the pharyngeals turns into a vowel, which interestingly enough also corresponds beautifully to sound change that affected some pharyngeals in other languages such as Akkadian, where the pharyngeal causes fronting of the vowel from a to e. In any case, so we have Yiddish ayin being or also zero in words of Hebrew or Aramaic origin, so Loshen Kodesh. So it would be ir, basically, is just ir in Yiddish. Skip that. So Ladino is basically, let's say, Jewish Spanish. Also uses Hebrew script to write the specific form of Spanish. Interestingly enough, ein is either zero or ch, so uvular fricative. And again, also kh for uvular fricative. So we find a repurposing. So they just did not throw this ein. They could have used kh consistently, but they still used this one. So they repurposed the grapheme. Highly interesting example is Kyrgyz, written in Arabic script, is a Turkic language of Central Asia, today written in Cyrillic. So in this language, like many Turkic languages, there's a system of vowel harmony where you have either like a front-back vowel harmony, and where the vowels are actually the phonemic part and the consonants. In this case, the velar alternates allophonically. So in this quite interesting script system, so the vowel signs are identical, even though they are the phonemic ones. And we can only know if this is a front or a back pair of the vowel harmony through the consonantal sign. One of them is a pharyngeal. So here the pharyngeal was used quite creatively, I would say, to indicate back vowel harmony. So, okay, we see Arabic ayn. Okay, this is back vowel harmony. We don't see it. Okay, this is the front pair. Yeah, whereas you see, so the variation between the velars is just allophonic. So the phonemic part are the vowels. And we here find it. It's also the use in Osmanic Turkish, as far as I know. Another quite interesting case of repurposing is Shawarjing, Chinese written Arabic script. Again, ein is an initial is used for so-called zero initial, which is similar to Yiddish as schwa or and the word itself, Shawarjing, it would look like something like this in Arabic, or an, which would look like something like this. So it's a zero initial. Just a second, sorry. Or as a nasal vinyl, which is actually also quite interesting because there's an intimate relation between pharyngeals and nasal, which is something I will talk about in another venue as it happens. Again, repurposing for similar vowel-like characters in Adamawa-Fula Western African language. Yeah, probably I should mention Mandaic too, because I'll come back to that later. So Mandaic is a Semitic language of Mesopotamia, still used today in both forms, classic and modern, to an extent. And as a Semitic language, it used to have ayin, but the documented form already lost that ayin. And it's again, so the grapheme for ayin is used for vowels. And a quite creative use of the other pharyngeals, the pharyngeal fricative. It's only used for third-person singular suffix, which would be phonologically long E in Mandaic. They could have just written long E, but so to speak, the function of this pharyngeal grapheme went from phonology to morphology, interestingly enough. But only this one, so quite interesting. We'll come back to the pharyngeal in a bit. Maybe an example, many of you are more familiar with Phoenician to Greek. So the adaptation of the Phoenician script to Greek. So you'd have chet, Semitic chet, which again became a vowel and incidentally a vowel like in many other systems of what I call repurposing. An interesting case is ayin, which became an o in Greek. So one way to explain that is that ayin means I, and this was translated, so to speak, into Greek, and the word for I in Greek is ophthalmos, and this also begins with an O, but most Bajitins now see that Phoenician script was carried on to Greek, not directly, but through mediums, that being possibly Phrygian or also through Cilician Pedea. So what I see here is just a good case of iconicity. So they had this grapheme and they looked at it. Okay, we don't have this phoneme, but this looks like a lip opening O, and we have this phoneme. So just let's use this as O. I think this is probably a good explanation of that. And you would find in other scripts of the world a kind of iconic correspondence between the grapheme O and the lip shape O, such as Korean and other languages. Etymologizing orthographies. Well, this happens, of course, because we have old resources or languages with ancient scripts which have pharyngeals, such as modern Hebrew, but which are also used in the modern language, which is in this case modern Hebrew, which only has one phoneme, which can be written either with the graphemic aleph or graphemic ayin, so graphemic glottal or graphemic pharyngeal. So avad and avad are identical phonetically, but different graphemically. And we can only know through writing. Again, with chet can be represented, so the phonemic velar uvular can be represented either with graphemic k, ch, or graphemic, let's say, pharyngeal. And this is actually a quite interesting case because it is standard and expected to write Hebrew consistently, so the pharyngeals consistently. So in any official document, if you want to say he worked, you should definitely write that with the pharyngeal grapheme and not with the glottal stop. So here's let's say an interesting approach. Oh wow, okay, just 5 minutes, thank you. So where standard orthography, so to speak, so it's expected to use the pharyngeals in writing, but it's substandard to actually pronounce them. So there's a different approach to spoken language and written language. Okay, etymologizing orthographies, Amharic. It's a bit more chaotic case actually than Hebrew. So we have graphemes for both pharyngeal and glottal, which are used extremely interchangeably in the language. The language only has one phoneme, which is glottal. The language lost its pharyngeals, its historical pharyngeals, and we only have the glottal phoneme. But it's represented in either graphemic glottal or graphemic pharyngeal. So you would have something like Ahmed, can be written either like this or like this. And it's quite confusing in Amharic. You would find in the same line, the same word written with two different graphemes. So it's a quite interesting case of how non-standardizing the script can look like. So interestingly enough, this is just an effect of etymologizing orthographies. A further language of Ethiopia, Bilen and Eritrea, actually has pharyngeals and now is written with Ethiopic script only in the last 100 years. But because of the etymologizing orthographies, now they have a graphemic ayin, so a graphemic pharyngeal to start with. Okay, final case, make-do orthographies, what I call make-do orthographies. So as I said, one example is Arabic language, widely spoken language, but we live in a, let's say, what I call a Latin-dominated world. So for many people, at least before smartphones, Latin keyboards were more accessible. And so when people chatted or used social media, so Latin keyboard, for example, was more accessible. And so they had to write Arabic in Latin. And two of this extra signs which were used to graphemically represent pharyngeals are these numerals, 3 and 7. So 3 for Ayn. So my name would be something like this, Saeed with in Arabizi, what's called Arabizi, so Arabic chat alphabet. And Ha would be with 7. And this is, of course, inspired by the visual similarity between Ayn and 3. It's just a flipped 3. And between Ha and 7, which we can see the visual similarity between the two. Okay, a final case of make-do orthography is Mandaic Ayn. So we just had Mandaic, and I said the language is a Semitic language which used to have pharyngeals at some historical stage, which were lost at some point, but the graphemes were there, so they repurposed them as vowels. But at some point, Mandaic was in contact with Arabic, and so many Arabic loanwords, such as names and other words, came into the language, and they were confronted with the fact, okay, we have a pharyngeal now again. How should we write that? So they just took the Arabic ayn and integrated into the, so I mean, with that really the graphemic Arabic ayn integrated into Mandaic script. Interestingly enough, so usually the Unicode looks like this, and it's never changes. So in Arabic, the letter form would change if it's initial, medial, or final. But in Mandaic, it would always look like this. So something like Ali would look like this. So I think this was a bit more ancient, let's say, phenomenon of make-do orthography is kind of similar to the modern Arabic chat alphabet. So one thing also about the Arabic chat alphabet, so in standard writing, so in official documents, pharyngeals are not represented, which is quite interesting. So they could have used a Q or a C like Somali, but you would find pharyngeals pressed out, so to speak, of official documents in Arabic, even though pharyngeals are kind of seen as a shibboleth of Arabic. Well, they're only represented in a non-official script. So yeah, I think this is also quite interesting attitude to spoken language and written language. It's kind of the reverse of the case I just mentioned in Hebrew, where writing is standard, but so writing pharyngeals is standard, but pronouncing them is substandard. So yeah, just a couple of conclusions. So I think the orthographic treatment of pharyngeals is shaped by entanglement, just to bring in the name of the conference into this talk. So of three aspects. So cross-linguistic rarity, as I said, 4% of the languages of the world. Diachronic instability, so these speech sounds are unstable for several reasons. So like in Hebrew, these sounds were lost. And quite importantly, historical contingency. It's just happened that we live in a world where many ancient languages happen to have pharyngeals in the writing system, and we live in a world where Arabic, Hebrew, and Aramaic are globally influential, and we live in a world where Latin script is more accessible, at least before smartphones. So these are just historical contingencies. It could have been the other way around. I think finding typological parallels is actually quite difficult. So uvulas are not as rare as pharyngeals. So 19% of the world, at least the sample of 566, which is not the world languages, but a good sample, genealogically diverse sample, have uvulas. So when a language adopts Arabic script, in many cases, it also has a uvula, and so just uses the uvular grapheme of Arabic in its own native sound system. And on the other hand, the sound class, which is much rarer than pharyngeals, clicks, found in only 1% of the languages of the sample, are not extant in major written traditions, so they did not have that influence of Hittite to Arabic. So it's kind of difficult to trace how they were adopted. I think nonetheless, comparatively investigating which orthographic strategies, other typologically rare phonemes, also including in newly created orthographies. So for many of the Khoisan languages, Southern Africa and beyond, I think is a promising avenue for future research and capital on comparatively investigating that. And yes, that's basically it. Thank you very much. I need to stop sharing. Or I can share again if it's...
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sid, for this overview and for solving the mystery that we had in front of us, or the mysteries. Now we're looking for questions. Yes, I'm afraid, I guess, in terms of sound, it's the only option.
Right. Thanks for the talk. Very interesting. I learned many things. My question is on Arabic, and well, you did show the letters Ain or Ha without the dots, and then the dots added for Rain and Ha. So that means that that's from the Aramaic that didn't have as many letters, as far as I understand. Could you clarify this part? And for the Jim that you also placed, apparently that the origin is different. It was from another letter. Well, can you clarify this for me, please?
Yes. So the thing is with early Arabic writing, so the language was used mostly what we had the topic before. So graffiti are a sort of mnemonics. So it was not that important to differentiate the different phonemes. So the let's say the native speakers of these specific Arabic varieties, which were written, could make out if that was a ha or a kha or whatever it was. And interestingly enough, so let me just share the window again. So the system of adding the dots is called jam, and jam translates basically to foreignizing. So only when Arabic became an influential language for also through the Quran and other mediums for people who are not native speakers of Arabic or not speakers of Arabic, where the dots added to make it more accessible. So it was foreignized in a sense, and actually still in for myself, when I write notes to myself in Arabic, I never write the dots. So it's kind of an addition to assist understanding for people who have different access to Arabic. I hope that answered the question to an extent, at least.
Yes. Thanks.
You?
Well, hello.
Hello.
That's me.
Hello.
So firstly, for your intro typology, you might be interested to know that there's a paper that's just been published, I think like this week, on Tuari, a language from Papua New Guinea, which turns out to have a voice pharyngeal fricative as well, which is a nice, cool place for it to pop up. In terms of the study of writing systems, maybe Tsovatush would be a good language to look at, because there's a traditional extension of the Georgian alphabet, Mkhedruli, which makes provision for all the sounds. But the problem is that the letter called Aini, which is epiglottal rather than pharyngeal, but same ballpark. It looks like an allograph of the letter L, and so people don't like using it. And what they've come up with is a digraph of two other letters in order to get round it. And I don't know if you'll find it, like if you look up the Wikipedia page, it'll probably give you the official orthography. So there's some interesting compromise going on there. And if you're curious, I can give you references to like stuff that's being produced in the community where you can see the struggle.
Actually, Actually, I will be in the Tsovatush community myself in the second half of August.
Oh, I know who you'll be with. Okay. In that case, you don't need any references. I was meant to be there as well, but I can't make it.
Oh, okay. We would have met then.
Okay.
But fantastic. Yeah, I think it's probably kind of inspired by the Arabic ayn again, in a sense. So the Tsovatush, so the Georgian adaptation, so the adaptation of the Mkhedruli script is kind of inspired by the Arabic ayn.
The original shape,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the IPA ayn. It's kind of omnipresent. So the graphemic Arabic ayn.
It does look a bit like that as well, but it also looks, as said, like the letter L.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Here. It goes to show it's a small world. So I think we have time for one more question. Otherwise, thank you very much